I mean, I think it exists as a separate category. It would be very difficult, though, to satisfactorily describe the characteristics of the category that would suit everybody. Perhaps you're not asking me to do that, but, well, look, I suppose essentially it's literature that will be read primarily by children and young adults, but it's not only that, is it? Because it's also, I suppose, got certain things about it that we expect when we come to work for children. I feel like I'm gabbling here because I think that's a very kind of deep question. Yes, I'm sorry to sort of hit it's just a hard question. Look, sometimes when questions are very difficult, all you can do is answer in a kind of instinctive way. And I would say with absolute conviction that it exists, but whether I could justify my conviction, I probably have to leave that to somebody else. But I stand by my belief. I suppose to me they need, they're the same sorts of books that the adults need. I guess books that are kind of rich and ambiguous and beguiling and enlarging. It's interesting, there are sometimes programs which I'm sure you have here, but we have them in Australia where there's this idea of trying to turn children into readers, and it's almost as though any old book will make them become readers. But I actually think if you hand a child who doesn't like reading any crappy old book, well, they're never going to like reading. If that's what they think it is, then they'll just toss it aside. So I think it's incredibly important that if you want children to become readers, that they're given books that demonstrate the power of language and of story. And that doesn't, when I say the power of language, I don't at all mean, sophisticated vocabulary or grammatical construction. I mean, the power of the simplest words can be turned into something, full of meaning and mystery and humour and all the things that we get only from reading, I suppose, or uniquely from reading. I recommended a book by an Australian writer who died recently. His name is Randolph Stowe, and he mainly, all of his other books except for this book, which is called Midnight, M-I-D-N-I-T-E, all of his other books were for adults, and his other books are, in some ways, they're very literary and pretty esoteric. And he wrote this one book about a bushranger. It's very Australian story. Also got certain about a sort of crazy bushranger and his animal companions sort of travelling the outback of Australia, and they do come across an eccentric German explorer. In fact, it's a very funny scene because Ludwig Leichhardt was a significant explorer of Australia in the 19th century, and so I guess in a way it's a kind of exploration of Australia and its history and but in a very satirical and funny and poignant way, but written in very, very accessible, very rich language for children. So I think any child would enjoy this book. I suppose I would more see myself in the artist category. I don't know if that's the answer that everybody gives. I'm never that comfortable, for some reason, with storyteller. I know a lot of writers would feel that was their primary aim, but for some reason I don't respond to that, but again, I'm not sure why I don't respond to that. I respond to artists, and I don't really respond to reading ambassador either. I suppose the questions of what books do children need comes up because obviously as a children's writer you're often asked that sort of thing, and also you get into these roles of encouraging children to read, but I guess so it's a kind of byproduct of being a writer for children, but it's not my primary goal. No, my primary instincts are artistic, I guess, not the other two. But obviously, I guess they're all contained. A fantastic opportunity to meet readers and for a children's author to meet children, to meet other authors and artists. So I suppose you're in a milieu where children's books are, in a festival for children's authors, are the number one thing, something important, and that's not that usual. I don't know about in Germany, but in Australia it's not necessarily that usual that, amongst, librarians and teachers, children's books are important, but in the larger society they're not particularly, I don't think. And so that's obviously very motivating and rewarding to come to a place where children's books are regarded as something important. And it is fascinating and fantastic to meet with readers. I think you also, in the sort of discussions that you might have either privately or in a panel, is you start to understand your own work in ways that you wouldn't have before, because they're just explored in different ways and make you think different things. For readers, I think in some ways it's the same. They're coming to a place, where books for those readers are regarded as an important and vital and interesting activity, that there's something interesting going on, and there's an energy there which, and I guess, look, it's funny, see, as a child, I never met writers, because in those days, writers sort of, especially writers for children, just weren't kind of around, so you didn't meet them. So I find it often very hard to understand or to imagine what it might be like for children to meet an author. So I find that hard to assess what meaning that would have to a child, but they certainly enjoy themselves, so that's good. And that's a delightful thing. So I'm less confident. I guess I just have to say I'm less confident to say what it means to the readers, if we're talking about children, which is not to say it doesn't have meaning, but I feel like I'm not quite sure what it is, whereas I guess from the point of view of the adults involved, I feel more confident to say that it's just very special and invigorating and important. So it's yeah, I think they're fantastic operations. Look, in terms of influence on young readers, it's always sort of after the event, if you know what I mean, because I think when you're actually writing the book, I guess I'm not thinking in those terms. You're just somehow, I suppose in a selfish way, you're more just thinking of what you want to say. You're just trying to find out what it is, what you want to say, and you somehow get it out. And then once it's out, then I suppose you sort of think, you might start to think of, well, what influence or meaning does that have for them? I think when writing for small children, it's more obvious, because a lot of writing for small children is performance. So, you perform the book in a sense when you read it aloud, and you can see them respond and get excited. I guess with young adults, because they're novels, and on the whole, reading a novel is a very private experience. So, like writing for adults, it's this, you're never quite sure what effect you're having. I don't know if I necessarily feel as if I have a role as an influencer, if you know what I mean. Like, I don't think of it in those terms, which doesn't mean it doesn't have influence, and perhaps I should think of it in those terms, but it's hard for me to sort of say that, I guess, because I just don't think about it that way. So, so that'd be one of those I don't know answers, yeah.